Hey everyone, actually in today's video we're going to have a look at the weather for the next 8 to 10 days. In today's video, that's taking us to the start of November, can you believe? Looks like we're going to be very much keeping the pattern that we've had through most of October really, with low pressure up to the north and northwest, high pressure down to the south and southeast, and winds generally from a mild southwesterly sort of direction. At the end of the video, have a look at some very interesting charts from the website weatherweb.net from the CFS blog. Before I get on with that, I just want to say about the ads. There's links to articles sitting underneath the weather video here on my homepage at gazweathers.com. If you have a browse through which you can see whether there's any articles that you're interested in, if there is, just click through the article and read the article when you finish at Gazweathers, and at the same time you're having to support the website. Thanks very much for doing that. There's also keyword ads on some pages. They illuminate blue. If you roll your cursor over in keywords, they'll display ads, but click through if you go to the outside website, you'll be supporting Gazweathers by doing that, and thanks very much for doing that. So you're going to start off with the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles first of all. The red line here is the 30-year temperature average for the next 2 weeks. And we can see that we're going to be above average really for the foreseeable future, certainly going out to the start of November, which is just there. The temperature ensembles are staying above average, actually going very mild for a time later next week. Maybe a bit of a dip occurring as we get through into the start of November. A lot of scatter within that, of course, as there always is in the second half of the ensemble, but I think the overall trend is probably a little bit down in terms of the temperatures for the start of November, but overall pretty mild scenes certainly for the next week to 10 days or so. The rainfall spike show going to have a bit of a drier spell actually coming up over the next few days down in the south, not necessarily for the north, but down in the south a little bit drier for a few days. We've got some quite heavy rain coming up tomorrow, but after that it looks like the weekend is going to be mainly dry and going into start of next week. From the middle of next week the rainfall spikes begin to come back, and as we go into start of November it could actually turn a little bit wet down in the south once again, and the north is never really going to turn drier up there. We're going to always be plagued by areas of low pressure and weather fronts. The temperature anomaly for the coming week, the 23rd of October to the 31st of October, last day of the month, show that the northwest of Europe is above average in the red colours. Look how cold it is over in the east and in the southeast of Europe, though. That's where the early winter type conditions are setting in through Russia into eastern Europe, down into southeastern parts of Europe. Temperature anomalies coming out below average. But as I say, up in the north and the northwest, it is a mild scene with those long fetched southwesterlies coming in. The precipitation anomaly from the 23rd to the 31st of October showed that to many parts of Europe actually quite dry. It's wetter than average up over Scandinavia and coming down to west of Scotland, also down in the south and southeast of Europe, or the southeast of Europe, where we've got that the cold temperature anomalies. But elsewhere, really a lot of dry weather with high pressure stretching through. For the British Isles, the precipitation anomaly is coming out a little bit drier than average down in the south, but as I say, in the northwest it's actually a little bit wetter than average. That's indicative of a northwest-southeast split that we're going to be seeing. Here's the generic GFS for right now, and you can see the general pattern is for low pressure to be around Iceland, high pressure to be ridging from Spain and Portugal up into France and on into eastern parts of Europe. If we go through a week, you see that the pattern is very similar. So as I said at the start of the video, it doesn't look like there's going to be a great deal changing with this pattern. Low pressure is out in the Atlantic, around Iceland, going into the central part of the Atlantic. The high pressure is ridging through Spain and Portugal into France, going into the east of Europe. The cold air is digging in around the east and southern side of that high pressure just there. We're on the mild side of it, pumping up those long fetched southwesterlies with mild air coming up from the Azores. Those are moisture laden for the north and the west, but down close to that high pressure in the south and southeast it is drier, so that's why the precipitation anomaly for the coming week is actually a little bit drier than average, although the general flow is quite an unsettled one. Because high pressure is close to the south and southeast, it keeps it drier down there. But I think as we progress through next week, it'll probably turn increasingly unsettled actually from the north and the northwest. Here we are at day 10 with the GFS on Sunday the 2nd, and then you see that low pressure is more strongly coming in. That's bringing rain in across all parts of the country, but winds are still from a southerly direction, so even out to the very start of November, it's looking pretty mild. The E7WF for a week's time, Thursday 30th of October shows that we've got a bit of a ridge extending through the country. It's a little bit stronger with that ridge actually through the middle of next week. So most places are dry on this sort of setup. Could be some fog and maybe even a little bit of ground frost at night if the sky's clear on this sort of setup. Although the flow is quite mild, because the nights are so long now, under this setup, if the skies were to clear, it could get quite chilly at night, and certainly the risk of some mist and fog patches. But as we get through to day 10, it's very much a similar sort of scenario to the ECMWF. In fact, I think the charts have got a bit wrong there, because that is the GFS day 10 chart. So I've just got to very quickly change things over. We can go to the ECMWF day 10 chart, which when it clicks over, and it will hopefully do so in a moment, the ECM day 10 chart looks like this, and the high pressure is beginning to decline away to the south and the southeast, with this area of low pressure coming in off the Atlantic. So it does imply that as we go through next week, it's probably going to turn, if anything, more unsettled with time. But certainly at the middle of next week, there could be plenty of dry weather away from the north and the northwest. Now, I said at the start of the video that there's been some very interesting charts at weatherweb.net from a CFS model this morning. This is the 500 millibar height anomaly chart for November, and not all that interesting really, this particular chart for November. We've got a trough of low pressure sort of dominating the weather up here to the north of the country. The flow is still sort of Atlantic based, something like that, so it's relatively mild and quite unsettled as we go through to November. But if we go through to December, look what it's showing for December. Huge amount of above average height setting up around Greenland there, with the yellow, red and almost off the scale sort of colours there, going towards that grey colour. That is almost off the scale in terms of high pressure up over Greenland. Consequently, we've got this trough sitting underneath it around northwestern parts of Europe, so that's low pressure sitting there around northwestern Europe. The high pressure is up here around Greenland, and the flow is going something like that around that ridge, and then coming down around the trough like that. So on the cold side of the jet stream with that, and we bring really cold air down from the north. If we have a look at the temperature, the maximum temperature forecast broke down to week periods for the start of December, the weekend in the 3rd of December, we see that generally temperatures around average at the start of December, nothing particularly cold showing up there, and that's because November is looking like being basically a mildish and unsettled month on this morning's CFS update anyway. But let's get through to the next week's period. This one takes us to the week ending the 10th of December. Much colder then. The cold air digging in from the north, so daytime maximum temperatures struggling to get above freezing. But next week, the weekend in the 17th of December, bitterly cold then, with maximum temperatures staying below freezing across the whole country virtually all day throughout the whole week. That is a very cold chart for that middle part of December. And then as we go through to the next week period, takes us up to Christmas Eve. Another bitterly cold week, not quite as cold as the week before, but even so, temperatures as the anomaly for the week are staying around or below freezing for most parts of the country. It's not till we get to the end of December, the week between Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, that we start to see the temperatures picking back up. But even then, they're still on the chilly side, still a little bit below average actually. So the CFS this morning has seen the chance of a really cold spell setting up in December. Now we're going to have to wait and see how that comes on, but I just thought you'd find it interesting to see what the CFS is showing, sort of a bit of an outrageous sort of cold scenario showing up on this morning's CFS at website weatherweb.net for December. But these charts change on a daily basis, so if you go back tomorrow and look for that, it's probably going to look rather different. And the idea, of course, with CFS is that, and always daily updates, is that you have to average it all out. You shouldn't really take one run in isolation as I've done today. What you have to do is check daily and average it out. Eventually you should come to sort of an average sort of solution that the model is seeing. What I've done is a little bit wrong there, to be honest, showing you one run in isolation, but it's very interesting with charts to bear, so you might as well have a look at them. Coming back to the reliable time frame, it's staying mild. Could be very mild at times, actually. And not too much rain, really, over the next few days, either down in the south and southeast. Always wettest in the north and northwest. Then later on next week, we may see a more general sort of change to unsettled conditions. We will have a look at November in depth tomorrow, because we'll have JMA Friday, month-ahead forecast for the Japanese model. We'll also have another look at the CFS, I'm sure, and probably Beijing Climate Centre as well. So come back for that. Hope that video interesting. Bye for now.